Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Cup. I am so excited today because I have Adam with me. Adam Piandes works with CEOs, entrepreneurs, professional athletes, and organizations every day to help them build leadership skills and solutions for themselves and their businesses. He creates engaging and successful leadership programs that leverage a 30-year journey in developing leaders. Thousands of leaders from close to 100 countries worldwide had completed Adam's courses. Adam honed in on his leadership and communication skills via a dedicated yoga and meditation practice, competitive sports, and a love for surfing. He's immersed himself in powerful communities such as the Mankind Project, learned master-level coaching practices from world-renowned Coaches Training Institute, earned a certification through the International Coaching Federation, and received a master's in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica. In addition, his insights have been featured in articles published by the Huffington Post, the Good Men Project, and Forbes. Adam entered the world with a gift and love for connecting with people, grew up in the Boston area, and was inducted into his high school athletic Hall of Fame, played basketball at Bates College and in Europe, lived in Colorado ski town for a few years, and eventually landed in San Francisco, California in 2001. He currently resides in Los Angeles and loves working closely with his clients to help them become stronger, more decisive leaders. Thank you so much, Adam, for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. It's so good to see you and reconnect. But I would love for you to kind of just tap in a little bit into your journey, how you got here today. I know you've experienced a lot. It's been an amazing journey, but if you could share with us how you got here today.
Yeah, sure. So, for most of my life, I would say I've been in some form of teaching, coaching, facilitating role. I always worked in camps with kids that were younger than myself. I think I started when I was maybe like 13 years old. Worked at basketball camps all through high school. In college was volunteering as, big brother mentor for local communities. And I just sort of continued down that path. I started out as a middle school teacher. I taught middle school for 5 years. I coached basketball for about 10 years. I ran speed and agility camps for mostly collegiate athletes in their off seasons. I had a tutoring business for a little while. So I dove into working with kids in some capacity for about 10 years or so. And then from there, I was living in the Bay Area and got sort of pulled into the tech world for a little bit. And I worked in startup companies for maybe 8 or 9 years, running business development groups, which was fun. And I liked selling things. I was pretty decent at it, but I wanted to get back to really working with people, coaching, facilitating. That's where I feel the most fulfilled. That's where I feel like I can contribute the most in terms of supporting others. And I started my, leadership development company practice, coaching practice about 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. And over the last 9 years, it's changed and evolved, and it's morphed and pivoted in a number of different directions. But at the end of the day, my mission is really just to be in service to others and to really help people align with their own individual gifts and then find ways to truly express those gifts so that they're not only in support of themselves, but they're stepping out into the world as leaders and being in service to others. So, and that can look a number of different ways and have a number of different business models associated with it. But at the end of the day, that's kind of what I'm up to and why I'm here.
I love it. And I would love to know what inspired you to really start, once you started developing the communication and leadership skills that you had internally, but started helping other people. What was the inspiration to start your own business?
Yeah. I worked in startup companies, and there's a certain all-in mentality that you have to have in order for a startup to survive. And we're talking survive for a few years, and then who knows where it goes from there. And where I really loved the all-in grit and the sacrifices that came with that. And at the same time, for me, I was selling services or products that weren't really an extension of my heart, you know, and so I'd been teaching and coaching kids prior to that, and there was just something that felt very real for me, or natural. I had this sort of innate calling to be a teacher and a coach. And so, you know, once I pivoted from that for a little bit and got into the startup world and developed some business acumen, it gave me a little bit of confidence to step out and say, okay, you know, I want to practice what feels in alignment within myself. And so having that business experience, having the startup experience, I launched my own coaching practice and working with a couple of friends to start, and just stayed down that path because it always felt like it just intuitively felt like the right thing to do.
Mm. I love that you like listen to your intuition, because sometimes that can be hard, or we might ignore it, but you really like listen to your intuition. But when you were starting, because you've had experience with startups prior, what have been maybe some roadblocks that you experienced along the way to get you to where you are today?
Oh, I mean, you know, roadblocks could be, I work for two startup companies that you've never heard of, right? So
Yeah.
they in some way, shape, or form dissolved or failed.
Mhm.
And I think that experience in and of itself, you know, was a major roadblock in a lot of ways, because there was so much energy input and not a lot of output in terms of, you know, what we deem to be successful. I mean, we made some money and were able to survive, but it was really a game of survival.
Mhm.
And, you know, that experience alone, or roadblock, if you will,
Mhm.
it was a really nice lesson to prepare for what it actually means to start my own business.
Mhm.
Um, you know, when I started my business and launched it back in, what are we, 2020, you know, 2014, 2013, I was sick at the time that I had launched it. I was not feeling well. And also during that time, I had started my master's program.
Mhm.
And also during that time, I had lost all my money in a fund that I had invested in, because there was fraudulent behavior at the top of the food chain there. And
Mhm.
so I all of a sudden I had this accumulation of events that all came together at one time that made for a pretty challenging time in my life. I was sick. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I started my master's program. I started my own business thinking I had a little bit of a nest behind me financially, and then that disappeared. And I ended up, as a result, going into quite a bit of debt because I I was dead set on starting my own business, and I didn't have the financial backing that I initially thought I had.
Mhm.
And so it was not a great start, you know, to launching the business. And I eventually, after a few years of really trying to figure out what was going on with my health, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in 2015. And
Mhm.
so I had completed my master's program in spiritual psychology, which was an incredible support network as I was not feeling well. But then I got diagnosed with cancer, and that just was a whole slew of other realities that I had to kind of immerse myself in, while at the same time, um, you know, staying with the being focused on continuing to start and build a business in coaching and leadership development. So it was a really, really challenging start to what is now, you know, a business that's been around for a little while, and a lot
Mhm.
of lessons learned from that experience.
Absolutely. And that's so much for one person to handle, of just all the different elements. It's like everything was crashing down, but still you surpassed that, and you still came out on top, even though there was so many, like you said, lessons learned and roadblocks that could have prevented you from continuing on. But you were able to finish your master's program. You were able to have a support network. Financially, it wasn't there in the beginning, but you were able to overcome that. You had cancer and were able to beat that. And I think it's just so amazing when our minds, and especially going through spiritual psychology too, it wasn't just like any kind of psychology, but how that
Yeah.
can really transform our mindset and what we're learning, but also who we're surrounded with too, because it's a lot of like-minded people. I'm I don't want to assume, but
No, you're right. I mean, it was a community of people who really always encouraged me to look underneath the surface a little bit and say,
yeah.
okay, so you're diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Well, what's going on underneath there? Where have you been limiting yourself from actually expressing yourself and being forthright and using your voice? I mean, there was something that was locked up and clogged in my throat, which is how we express ourselves, you know. And you know, the one thing I'll say is that you know, when a roadblock hits and you have intention of something unfolding in a certain way, right? I'm going to start my business and we're going to grow it and it's going to be great. Well, you know, inevitably there's going to be a roadblock, and with those roadblocks, you have to make some really challenging decisions and really think about sacrifice. You know, and when I was at that point, I didn't have an income that was coming in, but I had a place that I was renting at the time. You know, I was Airbnb-ing my place for 2 out of the 3 weeks per month, just so I could hold on to my place and so I could continue to build my business. And I was sick and sleeping on people's couches, and it's just a lot of sacrifice. And looking back in retrospect, I definitely wouldn't want to do it again, but I definitely wouldn't trade it.
Yeah, no, just in that experience too, it makes you more motivated to like, get things done or get really creative in making sure
Yeah.
that you didn't lose your place. But I love that you were able to share that too, because a lot of people think it's a walk in the park or just think, okay, well, I'll figure it out. But you did figure it out and you
Yep.
made it happen. And I want to touch on what you said too, because it was thyroid cancer and all about speaking and our voice. And a huge part of what you do is you help create leaders through communication and leadership skills. What have been some of the pivotal aspects when it comes to communication and how you really apply that in your coaching and your business?
Yeah. You know, I like that you use the word creative as a mechanism for meandering through challenging experiences, because you do have to tap into your creativity, you know, and creativity truly is that spark that allows you to create, well, to bring things to fruition and to make some tough decisions. You have to be creative. So I like that you use that word.
Mhm,
So with respect to communication,
mhm,
you know, if thyroid cancer from a spiritual perspective represents an individual having a blockage in their throat and not expressing themselves or speaking their truth,
mhm,
um, you know, what it also symbolizes or represents is, on the flip side of it, is a real opportunity to unlock that area, right? Is to really
mhm,
free yourself up and to allow yourself to be, or I should say, allow myself in this instance to be expressive and to tap into that voice that we all have, right? You know, we all have a voice that we can choose to either use or not.
mhm,
And when I went through the cancer diagnosis and thyroid cancer diagnosis, it really was an opportunity for me to say, okay, dude, like, are you going to start sharing your gifts? Like, are you going to start speaking from a place that really matters from within yourself? And so, you know, when that happened and I was able to shift my perspective on it, yeah, communication then became the sort of the pillar or the core component of the programs that I developed and now run to this day. Um, you know, we look at everything, or our programs are designed to start from the inside and work outward. So when we talk about communication, internal communication is what are the stories that you're telling yourself within yourself, and how do you communicate and connect with those stories? How do you reframe those stories? And how
mhm,
do you give yourself compassion and all those wonderful things? And then step out into the world and be brave and curious and creative, as you suggest,
mhm,
and sharing, you know, your gifts and your thoughts and feelings and emotions with the rest of the world. And so, you know, for me, that is what leadership looks like for me. And I think that is where leadership is headed. I
mhm,
think there's a massive paradigm shift that we're in the midst of, which we're kind of slowly getting ourselves out of the old paradigm of, you know, barking at instructions and telling people what to do, into more of this collaborative coaching leadership environment where we as individuals are willing and able to express ourselves, and on the flip side are learning how to receive other people's expressions as well. So it all stems from communication, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I love that you pointed out too. It's how people receive it as well, because we can be communicating, but how do you make it a collaborative, safe space to speak up, especially in leadership roles or in business, but being able to really stand in your power, but knowing it's not to be overpowering somebody in that
Yeah.
sense, but really being able to hear information, because a lot of times, like what you're saying too, it's like you're dictated to do this, this, and this. But being able to have that open space to collaborate and understand what's going on. So to create more leaders, because you can have a boss versus a leader. I'm curious what your take on is the difference between a boss and a leader.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that if there is a distinction, if we were to create one, it's, um, I think of a leader as somebody who, again, nowadays is somebody who can meet me where I'm at,
Yeah.
and is able to connect with me from a place that feels empowering, and is able to listen and remain curious, and understands that I'm a leader as well.
Mhm.
Right. Where a boss to me is someone who, I report to, and someone who cuts me a check or whatever it is, or someone who I'm fearful of, you know. And so I think that for language purposes there is a sharp distinction there. And the other thing I want to share is around leadership is oftentimes a leader is associated with somebody who has a team underneath them, um, or is the head of a company or the upper tiers of an organization. And for entrepreneurs who are starting their own businesses, leadership development is one of the most important things that you can prioritize in terms of whether you choose to be a one-person entity moving forward, or you choose to develop a large-scale organization. Developing yourself as a leader, seeing yourself as a leader is imperative, right? It's because it becomes a form of expression in terms of how you step into the world. It's not just a title or a tier that you want to step into within some form of a community or organization. It really becomes a personal form of expression where you're able to align within yourself, tap into your own values, find the confidence from within, and really step in as an entrepreneur, as a leader of the product or service that that you want to bring into the world and help others with.
No, I really appreciate how you put that, because it's really embodying that. It might not be the CEO of the company, but just how we show up in the world, being able to express ourselves, because a leader can look very different in different situations too. And I think you really touched on that so beautifully, of understanding that in its form of expression. It's how we show up to the world by ourselves, like in maybe just our everyday life, but also in a company, and how we run that with clients, with customers, whatever it may be. And so I'm curious, because I know you've worked with so many different walks of life of people. What has been maybe one or two client success stories you could share with us?
Sure. So I created this program called the Art of Masterful Communication, which is a 12 video module online course. And we've brought that course into organizations and used it as the content for discussion. So we run the program over 6 weeks, up to a year, and then we use the information from the modules within the course to set up small group discussions, to have to create meaningful connection, to challenge one another, to make people a little bit uncomfortable with some of the topics that we touch upon. And when I launched the course, I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I put it out in sort of various third-party platforms and got some data back that suggested it was good. But we had our first true success story globally with a company out of Toronto, when the CEO really aligned with the intention of the program and decided to distribute the program to their entire organization across, I think it was 25 countries. So it was the first time that, you know, we were merging people from all different cultures and walks of life that were, you know, immersing themselves in this online course that I had developed. And, you know, it just turned out to be a fantastic experience. And what I sort of intuitively knew from my own travel experiences and what have you, and business experiences, is that at the end of the day, we're all sort of speaking the same, this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but we're all speaking the same language, you know, and that everyone wants to be seen, everybody wants to be heard, and everybody wants to be acknowledged. I don't give a shit where you're from. And being able to create that experience within a corporate environment where people are often a bit fearful to fully express themselves, or to be vulnerable, or to talk about their fears, or to talk about rejection, or just to talk about the things that make them uncomfortable. And to actually witness it happen, you know, from people from all over the world, and collaborating in that way was just a really awesome experience for me. It validated a lot of things that I had already knew, but it was just cool to see, like, oh shit, you know, there is a different way to communicate within these, you know, communities and organizations, and people actually want to do that, right? They don't want to put on their business hat and use phrases like, you know, run it up the ladder, or like circle back with you, and you know what I mean? Like all these sort of like overused phrases that are just like, I don't even know what that means. So it was nice to witness that. Another quick experience I'll share with you is that, and this is, I think this is a good example of when you start a company, or you start a business, you have an idea or a product, you have no idea where it's really going to end up. We've since taken the Art of Masterful Communication program and launched it within a prison in Hawaii, and it's the first prison that we've worked with. And so there's a you know, multiple cohorts of incarcerated adult men who are going through the same program that I've put, you know, major CEOs of global organizations through. And so I'm taking on those clients, and I'm meeting with these men twice per cohort. So I meet with them twice over the course of 6 weeks. And I've witnessed these individuals find a new level of freedom within themselves to be able to not only share their own fears, and to share their own challenges, and to tap into self-forgiveness for a lot of them, and self-compassion, and to have them embrace this opportunity wholeheartedly has been probably the most profound experience I've had in my professional life. You know, I get on with these guys, and they're all like, you look at them and they're just jacked, you know, dudes. And you look at them on the from the exterior, and they're somewhat intimidating, you know, like big dudes, but with just these soft like centers, you know, and it's been really, really beautiful. Now I like cry every session with them, and they end up cheering me on, like, to encourage me. So it's been you know, it's been just a wonderful example of how life will just take you in these crazy directions sometimes, and they can if you allow it, it can really be a pretty beautiful experience.
And you know, you never know the impact you're going to make. And I love how it's such a broad spectrum of the individuals you are able to help, from CEOs to the individuals in prison, and being able that at the end of the day, we're all human. And
Yes.
I love that you created something that can touch on every aspect of life. How did you come up with like the material? Like, because I know you said you have modules, video modules that you utilize, but what was that process like making that course?
Yeah. You know, I'm currently I've struggled a little bit lately with my own creativity, as I've wanted to tap into creating a new program, and I'm starting to do that. And and what I've done is tried to insert myself back into when I was creating that first course. And you know, I literally built the course off of intuition. And you know, I'd been a math teacher before prior, and so my mind has a tendency to think systematically, right? And so like the order of operations that you find in mathematics, I was able to apply to creating a program that actually is progressive in nature and builds off of one another, and it's sequential. And I'd been a teacher for years prior to that, so I think that for me, that's one of my natural gifts, is to be able to deliver something in a way that is progressive in nature, that's incremental in nature, and that builds off of previous lessons. And so I just kind of tapped into that part of myself and said, okay, what are the things that I believe are essential? What are the categories that I believe are essential for everybody to live a better life, you know, just at its core? And at the same time, how can I make it as simple as possible so that it's not these overly complex ideas and theories that people just they don't care about that. So they want something simple and relatable, and something that they can say, oh shit, that's me. Like that feels like me. And so I wrote down a master list of all the different themes and came up with with 12 themes, 6 themes that work within ourselves, which was energy, what we call like blind spots, invisible obstacles, fear, awareness, choice, and compassion. And I looked at those, I said, you know, those are 6 themes that encompass a lot of different subset categories. And I think that if somebody were to kind of look at those things within themselves, they can grow from that. And then, you know, what are some more tangible communication skills that we use with other people, such as listening, asking questions, curiosity, silence, you know, empowering others, asking for what you want. These are, again, 6 fundamental, relatable skills that can support people in their own growth. And at the same time, these are 12 subset categories where we can create questions that will inspire some meaningful discussion and some exploration, not only within the individual, but with others. So it was, you know, it was a long process that took hundreds of hours to create.
So it wasn't overnight.
No, shit. I mean, I ended up doing all the storyboarding myself. You know, I went and found all the graphics on my own, and I was, you know, working on a really tight budget at the time, and was able to create a high quality product. What I will say is that if anyone ever wants to build a course, it doesn't need to be of the highest quality. Like, as long as it's good content and you're helping somebody, like, that's really all that matters.
I like how you put it, that simple, because it is that simple. Like, it takes time, of course, and all the effort, but really just focusing on the content, all the like pretty stuff on like how it shows and looks, like that's nice to have, but it's really the must-haves is the content. And I love how you really brought all these different concepts that are so relatable to every single human being. It's how maybe we interpret it, but being able to like combine all of that so it can be able to relate to a business, to prison, to an individual, to any aspect of life that has a beating heart.
Totally.
I think it's incredible what you have created and how it's just transpired. Absolutely. I think it's important. I think it's important to talk about it as well, because these are just human nature things that we don't get a chance to talk about all the time because we're focused on other things. But I think this is the core of it, because it's the core of relationships, how we relate to people, how we communicate with people and lead the way. But what are maybe 2 or 3 things that you wish you would have known in the beginning of your journey that you know now?
A journey of starting a business? Yeah. You know, the biggest thing I would say is where I was aware of my own emotional well-being. Emotional health is, I would say, probably the most important pillar of building a business. And this is actually where my focus is going right now, is I'm building a program that's designed around this premise. Is that, if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to start a business, yes, you have to have a service or a product that has market fit. There has to be operational components that come into it so you can launch this thing. You have to have some sort of financial, you have to have money in some way to be able to support the growth of a business.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of like operational components to it, and marketing and so on and so forth. And that's where the tendency is that all of the energy goes towards those things. And those things are important, and you have to have them to start a business. But what ends up happening is, if you do not prioritize emotional health, the ebbs and flows of starting a business and the challenges that come with it will literally like destroy you.
Yeah.
If you're not careful. I read an article recently. It was something like 72% of entrepreneurs endure some sort of mental health challenge, like pretty impactful stuff. That's a large percentage. And so my experience was one where I was aware of my own emotional growth and emotional well-being along the way. I didn't necessarily associate it with being an important component of actually starting a business and what that means for longevity. So that's kind of a long answer to that's one thing. The second thing that I'll say is one of the things that happens for me, at least what happened for me, is when I bring people in to support the growth of my business, I tend to develop deeper relationships with these people, and they become my friends. And I've had to part ways with somebody who was instrumental in helping me grow as a person, as a business, and just taught me so much. We just got to a point where we needed to create separation from our business relationship, and it's really hard. That was really, really challenging. And so, I guess what I wish I knew prior, and it's something that you hear about, is that it's not personal.
Yeah.
Those things aren't personal. It's just people make decisions, or you have to make decisions along the way that are going to serve you at the highest level. And if you have to part ways with somebody else, it isn't. It feels very personal, and it isn't at the same time, right? Like, you can take these things personally, but this is someone I love and admire, and so it's not. It becomes this like tricky kind of dynamic where you've got to kind of separate yourself from the emotional component and make a decision that's best for the business itself, or best for you at the time. And so those are two things that I would say is like the overall emotional health of moving through building a business, and being able in those times of having to create, part ways with people, is to not take it so personally, I would say.
Yeah. No, those are phenomenal, and I think are not talked about enough, because that's one of the things I really work with my clients on, is the psychological process of building a business, being an entrepreneur, because it can be really challenging. But I love that you said too about when you are working with someone, you might love them so dearly, but it's time to separate, and it's not taking it personal. It might be for the business, it might be personal reasons, but it really has to be for the highest good for both people, because there comes a crossroad, and sometimes you just have to cross that path by yourself or going different directions. But that's nothing about that person. It's just how we grow. We grow in different directions. Sometimes we don't love the person less by any means, but those are really challenging. And that's where leadership and communication, I think, really plays such a huge part, especially the communication piece, like communicating with yourself and being honest of what's necessary. So I'm really glad you brought up both of those points, because I really need to highlight those, because I think they're not talked about enough as
Cool.
well. But I've been enjoying this conversation so much, Adam, but we're going to jump into the rapid fire questions if you're ready for them.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. The first question is, who is your hero?
My hero would be my grandfather.
Love it. And what motivates you to work smarter?
Working smarter, I tend to feel lighter and more joyful.
That's good. That's important. So if you were to be a superhero, what would be your power or powers?
Flying, without a doubt.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah. Could
Yeah.
see everything.
Yeah. I mean, I was just surfing out this morning and looked up and saw these birds like cruising over the water. And it was like, that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah. See things from a different light, right?
Yeah.
Or perspective.
Yeah.
And
Especially with LA traffic, you could kind of avoid that as well.
oh yeah. Yes. That's a must. I'm surprised they don't have flying cars yet in LA. I mean,
It's
they have
not a bad
helicopters.
idea. I was going to start
It's
a business.
coming. And what is the most daring thing you've ever done?
I would say going into I would say going through the master's in spiritual psychology program felt like a pretty daring endeavor because I didn't really know why I was doing it. I just felt like I needed to do it at the time. So there wasn't a lot of rationale behind it. On paper, it didn't make a whole lot of sense, but I just did it. And it was the right thing to do because it felt like the right thing to do. But I would say it was a pretty daring, kind of bold move at the time because I was, as I shared before, was going through a number of different hellish kind of things at once.
Well, you're right where you needed to be and you followed your intuition. And I think that's been the message across the board. Just follow your intuition because it will lead you.
It will.
What is the phone app that you use the most?
Nowadays it's TikTok because I'm trying to put out, 3 or 4 videos a day on that thing, which has been uncomfortable for me. But so whether I like it or not, TikTok's been where I've spent a majority of my time lately.
It's a good app. I was resistant at first too.
Yeah. Yes.
And what is the last book that you've read or listened to?
Barbarian Days, A Surfing Life.
Hmm.
Yep. Really, really good. Highly, highly, highly recommend.
Sounds intriguing. What is your favorite family recipe, whether it's a traditional one or you just love making it together?
So my family's Greek on both sides, and my favorite Greek dish is spanakopita, or spinach pie. Yeah.
Both great choices. I'm sure very authentic too.
Yep.
And if you had to describe yourself as an animal, personality type, style, what animal would you be?
I had a conversation about this the other day with somebody that was doing an exercise where they had 5 different animal choices. And I chose it. And out of the 5 there, I chose a tiger.
Why a tiger?
There's a fierceness to the tiger, there's like a sort of a gracefulness that I would hope to emulate. There's like a strong presence. And then there's, yeah, I don't know. I just think tigers are cool.
No, they're awesome. They're awesome. So if you have a day off, what is your favorite way to spend your day off?
Surfing in the water, for sure.
I was gonna
and reading, and then like I'm going on a surf trip next weekend, and it'll be a surfboard and books.
gotta
maybe
do what we're passionate about.
Modelo in between somewhere.
Ooh, well, that's gonna be super fun.
Yeah.
So what is something an outsider wouldn't know about your industry?
It's a good question. I would say my industry is coaching or leadership, personal development. Is that my experience has been that the industry, there's a strong spiritual component to coaching in and of itself, because when I think of spirituality in very simple terms, I see it as a person's ability or willingness to resolve their unresolved issues in real simple terms, so that the fewer issues that one has, the lighter they become, the more open they become, which in many senses is what ascension in life is about. And so I think that those things, coaching and spirituality and personal development and growth, are all sort of intertwined. And that word spirituality can freak people out sometimes, but at its core, it really is about just inner exploration and learning to resolve those things that keep us stuck.
And I really appreciate how you put that, because I do think spirituality, when people hear the word, they're like, oh no. And it can be very simple.
It's so LA.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh my gosh. But Adam, where can people find you, use your services, find your course? We're going to link everything below, but if you could let us know too.
Yeah, I'm spending a bunch of my time on TikTok, so if anyone's interested in that, it's at Adam Piandes. My website is www.adampiandes.com, and on there we have our individual programs and our corporate programs that we offer, and those are probably the best places. Those are the best places. Or I'm on LinkedIn as well with everybody else, there's a zillion people. But if you want to learn more about the programs that I offer, or just kind of what I talk about, those are probably the best spots.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for sharing your story, your journey, all the insight that you had to offer us today. And I know you have so much more, so make sure to follow him on TikTok and watch those videos. He's putting in a lot of effort over there. But I just appreciate you coming on and really sharing your journey with us today.
It's cool to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment below. What was the biggest takeaway from Adam today? What did you learn? I'm sure he would love to see that comment as well. And we'll see you on the next video.